Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the Rimmel Magnifeyes Jewel Rocks Edition eyeshadow palette. This eyeshadow palette is one of the crazier color schemes of the Magnifeyes eyeshadow palettes by Rimmel. I picked out this one because I felt like it was really different from the other ones and it wasn't like anything that I already have in my collection, so I wanted to test out the formula and then let you guys know what I thought about it. In this video, I'm also going to be showing you how I did this eye look, and I'm going to be showing you these swatches close up of the eyeshadow palette. So if you guys want to see my review on this eyeshadow palette, then just keep on watching. So I started out by using the two matte transition sort of shades. They don't really have a nice medium brown shade to work as a transition, so I sort of had to improvise and use these two shades right here mixed together to get a shade that was that could be a nice transition color for this eye look. Then to start building up some depth, I used the dark green shade right here. This is the only dark matte shade in this palette, so I kind of had to use that one to build up darkness in the outer corner. This shade ended up giving me a lot of trouble actually, so I took that green shade on a larger pointed brush and I put that into my outer corner, and then I started to blend this out using this brush right here, which is like a really skinny blending sort of brush with no product on it, and I just tried to blend that out into the crease. On this eye, it was sort of hard to get that color to blend into my crease, but eventually I did get it to do that a little bit, and then I picked up some color on the very tip of this brush, and then I put that into the crease to deepen up the crease because it wasn't bringing as much color into the crease as I wanted it to, so I just picked up a little bit with the tip of this brush. On my other eye though, this color gave me a lot of trouble, so I did the same thing with the larger pointed brush. I put it right in the very outer corner, and then I tried to bring it inwards. I think that it went too high initially and it just was not blending into my crease at all. It was looking really patchy, and the color would just not move around very well. So I was trying to blend it with this brush with no additional color on it, but it wasn't working at all, so I picked up a little bit more color on the very tip of this brush and I tried to do the same thing and blend it out a little bit, but it was just getting really patchy and it just was not working out at all. I spent probably 10 or 15 minutes just trying to blend out the crease on this eye and it just was not working. I'm not going to show you guys all of that because it would be really boring, but I just kept going back and forth, and I tried to use a fluffier brush and take those transition colors I used to try to blend it out, and it just was not working at all. So eventually I just gave up and I moved on both eyes. For the lid, I took the darker of the two green shades, this one right here, and I put that, just using my finger, I tapped that onto the center of the lid, and then I left a little bit of space right towards the inner corner, and I took the lighter green shimmery shade on my finger as well and just tapped that into the inner corner. For the lower lash line, it was kind of hard to find a color in this that would complement the green tones, so I was thinking about using this blue color, but I just felt like it would be too overpowering and just wouldn't go very well. And then the other colors in this I just felt like didn't really work with the eye look. So I ended up taking this bronzy shade right here on a tiny pointed brush, and I just ran that along my lower lash line, and I felt like that worked pretty well. It wasn't exactly what I would have wanted, but it was just what I had to work with because there were no colors that I felt like really worked with this eye look. And then I just put some false lashes and mascara on to complete the look. So as for my thoughts on this palette, I think that it's a pretty good palette considering that it's drugstore pricing. It's like $7 or $8, I can't remember exactly. But I think that this palette in particular, I know that they have a ton of these types of like Magnifeyes palettes, but I feel like this one in particular just doesn't work for me very well because, well, there are a couple of reasons why I don't think that it works very well. The first one is that there aren't enough matte shades. All of these except for the mustardy shade, the coral shade, and the dark green shade are shimmer shades. So it was really hard to create a base with just those three matte shades, and I felt like these three didn't even really go together very well at all, except for maybe the mustard and coral shade worked pretty well, but the dark green just like seemed out of place. And that was kind of the theme for me for this palette too, is that a lot of these colors felt out of place. Like I didn't feel like this teal color went with anything at all. I know that a lot of the times makeup brands want to like step out of their comfort zone and like make palettes that aren't just like the regular nude brown sort of shades, but I feel like this one they could have done it in a way that makes it easier to use those like kind of crazier colors, and I just felt like this was like really hard to come up with like a wearable look from this. I felt like they could have used like a matte dark brown in this, and that could have like pulled this whole thing together, or I felt like they could have just gotten rid of like a couple of these shades right here because there's like 3 light gold shimmer shades, and I felt like you wouldn't really be using like very many of those during one eye look. So they could have replaced one of those with a dark matte shade or with like another matte transition color or something like that. I feel like there were a lot of ways that they could have made the colors of this palette work a little bit better. As for the actual formula, I really liked the formula of these two shades right here, the matte mustard shade and the matte coral shade. I felt like those were pigmented, but they weren't so pigmented that it was impossible to blend them out. And they gave a little bit of kickback when you put your brush into it. A little bit of powder came up, but it wasn't so much that it was really irritating, and I felt like they worked really well as like a nice transition shade. But as for the other matte shade, this dark green right here, I felt like that one was really hard to blend out. And I know that I'm not like a makeup artist or anything like that, but like for the regular consumer, it would have been really hard to make this green shade look good without being really careful or without knowing exactly how to use it. So my recommendation for using this shade is to place it exactly where you want it to go and place a lot of it there, and then when you're blending it out, just use very light strokes to blend it out, but also keep in mind that you're not going to be able to blend it as easily as any of the other colors in this palette. As far as the shimmers in this palette, I felt like they were all a little bit lackluster except for this bronze shade and the like bronzy red sort of shade, copper shade. I felt like they were all a little bit lackluster, and they took a lot of building up to get them to look really good on the eyes. I don't know, they just didn't really impress me all that much. But the copper shade and like the bronzy shades right here, those ones were actually really nice. They had like a lot of dimension to them. They were really soft and very pigmented, and they looked very nice on the eyes. But like for example, this blue shade right here, if you really like that kind of color and you want to do like a dark blue smoky eye or something like that, I think that you're gonna have a lot of trouble with this shade because it's just not pigmented enough and it's not very soft. It's really hard to get this one to show up in the way that it looks on the pan. So I think that if you wanted to pick up this palette, you should just be aware of those things, that some of these colors aren't going to look as beautiful as they do in the pan. So overall, I felt like this palette was a nice palette to have from the drugstore, but that it was lacking a little bit in its color story. I felt like it was kind of hard to come up with like cohesive looks from this. I know that they do have a bunch of different palettes like this, and I picked like one of the more like quirky ones, I guess. But just keep in mind, even with those palettes, even if they seem to go together a little bit better, just remember that the formula in these isn't really consistent, and the shades that you want might be like hit or miss. So just be aware of that. There are a couple of eyeshadows that I wanted to suggest really quickly from the drugstore. I really like BH Cosmetics shadows. Those ones have really nice buttery matte shades, and the shimmers are really intense and sparkly. Also, ColourPop shadows I really like, and Juvia's Place shadows. I know that Juvia's Place isn't technically drugstore, but it is like on the cheaper side of eyeshadows. Those three brands of eyeshadows I really love. So this is a very affordable palette, but just keep in mind that there are other formulas that might work better than this. If you haven't tried them out, then I would suggest going and trying those ones out before picking up this palette. So that is it for my review on the Rimmel Magnifeyes eyeshadow palette in Jewel Rocks. I hope that you guys found this helpful. If you did find this review helpful, please give this video a big ol' thumbs up. I would appreciate it so much. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.